Welcome to our latest edition of the Prosperity Builders broadcast. We're so excited to have you join us, and I'm really excited to have my friend and community leader Cindy Mondello join us. So thanks for being here, Cindy.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
I'm excited. So Cindy has been a part of my life for, how long has it been? 25 years?
Probably 2000 is when we met.
Yeah. So we were pleased to meet at church, and we've had a lot of connections over the years. We know a lot of the same people, but we were so proud to be part of, I guess, a group that helped Cindy as she began to launch Restoration Place. And so we're going to spend some time tonight talking a little bit about Restoration Place and all that has grown into over the years. So I'm super excited about that. So let's just kind of go back to that time period and tell us a little bit about why Restoration Place and how did that get started?
Well, I kind of giggled whenever you first reached out to me because you kept saying like RPM.
I know.
And I was like, it's not RPM anymore. So we started as Restoration Place Ministries. That's still our legal name, but in 2014 we switched over to doing business as Restoration Place Counseling because people would say to me like, well, how long did the women stay there? And I'd say like an hour.
Right.
And then they can go.
Right.
They come for an hour of therapy and then they can leave. But yeah, so I started it, was that your question about starting it? Okay. I started in 2005. It really grew out of my own story. In 1996, the Lord delivered me from alcohol addiction. I also had struggled for probably 15 years with a pretty severe eating disorder. And so as He brought me through that initial phase of just healing from those dysfunctional behaviors, at the same time, like I realized I was still just a hot mess as far as my thought life and my heart, and just dealing with choices I had made in my life, and started working with a Christian counselor here in Greensboro. The Lord moved me from Louisiana, where I was born and raised.
Go Tigers?
Yes. Go Saints.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Anyway.
Got to give a plug for the Saints.
So I mean, he moved me here, and so that was kind of the beginning. And I started working with this Christian counselor, and I really began seeing like those fragmented parts of my life, like somewhat literally feeling like it was just coming back together into a place of wholeness, and decided that's what I wanted to do. My first career was in elementary education. I moved here to do publishing in the elementary education world, and so decided.
So back to school you went?
Back to school I went to Gordon Conwell in Charlotte, and I always say it just so happens, but I feel like it's God just. It wasn't just a coincidence. My sister was living in Charlotte.
Right.
I would go, the campus was South Charlotte, and would go stay with her on the weekend. It was set up, that campus is set up for like the adult learner. So somebody who feels called to go into ministry, but is already in some sort of job, whether it's a full-time ministry job or like me, I was working at a publishing company. Oops, I probably just hit that. Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. I get a little like the Italian in me. So I'd go down on the weekend to have class, stay with my sister, come back, work my full-time job, and did that for a couple of years that way, and then quit full-time and decided to do school full-time and finish this gig.
You went to I want to go back to school. I want to go get my advanced degree, and I want to become a counselor, a Christian counselor specifically. So there's quite a leap from I'm going to be a counselor to I'm going to found a ministry. Now, I remember the days when you were meeting in a small little closet, right? An annex like that big. And so I think it really began to evolve to you to a place where, and we won't get quite to where we are today because that's important to talk about. Yeah. But so talk to me about the evolution.
Yeah. Well, I was still meeting with that counselor, my Christian counselor, and just started, recognizing wanting to meet with women, recognizing that cost was real prohibitive to people getting the help that they need. And it really just, when I think back to the steps that happened, like I could not have coordinated that myself. It's interesting because one of our mutual friends, Stephen Job, had told me, so I was quitting my full-time job, I was going back to school. full time. I was already back in school, and we were, it's like, how was I going to fund myself during this time? And Stephen said, oh, well, so-and-so like raised support while he went to seminary elsewhere. And then my counselor had brought this to my attention of this other organization ministry that would provide kind of a conduit for funding for people to give support. And I was like, people are going to, they'll give me money to go to Uganda to help at the orphanage.
Right.
They're not going to give me money to go to seminary and pay my mortgage.
Right.
But that's just the way it happened, and the Lord provided for those 2 years. I mean, down to the penny. I could tell you stories, just like exactly what I would need when I would need it. And so I already had this base of supporters that had seen this in me through Bible studies I'd led and mentoring I had done, and really saw like, oh, this is something that God's calling her to. I didn't intend to raise money beyond those 2 years. Right. 17 years later.
Yeah. We're going to talk about your fundraising because it's some amazing stories that go along with that. So I love the transition from I want to become a counselor to beginning to the Lord birthing some new things in you. And you talked specifically about the niche that you were passionate about, and that was folks that can't afford counseling because it can be cost prohibitive. If you don't have insurance, it can be expensive.
Real high-paying job.
Or a high-paying job, right. So talk to me about kind of how that piece has begun to play out in your ministry, because really as it began to expand, there was an underserved niche of women who needed counseling but couldn't afford it.
Right. Anecdotally, I knew that. I would ask, because I loved counseling so much as a client, I would tell probably all of our friends at the time, why did you go to counseling? Have you thought about counseling? And so many times, like women at work, like and they would say, I would, but I can't afford it. I just can't afford it. And so I knew that was an issue. I also, during my internship, saw a lot of college students who were coming and just paying like $20 because, I was an intern at the time. I wasn't licensed yet. And as I got closer to licensure, they were very worried about the price going up because they could come from college. They wanted a counselor who was going to operate from a biblical worldview. On campus, they weren't going to receive that. But they could pay $20 a session without having to call mom and dad and say, hey, I'm going to counseling, like, can you help me pay this? And so it was something they were able to do. And it was just those types of things that made me think like, well, I wonder how I could do it where I wouldn't have to charge people very much, but still be able to like put a roof over my own head. And just this, continuation of this fundraising, not fundraising, but support raising from people around me, from my community. And so I forgot what I was talking about. That's what
that's what happens when we record at the end of a long day, right? So we get a little brain tired.
So your question was getting into that niche. And then so anecdotally I knew that was a need, and then I started to see these reports coming out of it being documented both locally in Guilford County as well as across the nation. That counseling, that cost is one of the main barriers for people getting the help that they need. So we're going to fast forward a few years to not to where we are today, but as that began to evolve, right? More space is needed. The demand begins to increase, right? Maybe even beyond the capacity of what you can meet with people. So now it's like, what do I do? Do I grow? What's that begin to look like? So kind of take us to that phase of where you evolved. Well, so for the first 5 years, I was the only provider, and then we had a board of directors. And so, it got to the point where I couldn't really take on any more clients myself because I just didn't have space to work with them. And I remember at a board meeting, and I remember the board member who said she was kind of like, okay, what are we going to do here? Like, are we going to, if it's just going to be you for the rest of the days of Restoration Place, like garage sales and car wash ticket fundraisers are plenty to cover the cost. But there had been conversation about, like, we see this as a bigger place with multiple counselors with different, strengths and different, demographics that they wanted to serve. And
so was that board responsible or helpful in vision casting with you? Because were you there yet? Like, I see this being big and doing these things, or was that part of it?
I don't think I was there.
Okay.
I think I dreamed it.
Right.
I think initially I dreamed it because I was in seminary at school in the counseling program with several other close friends that were also pursuing. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool if we could all be in a place together. So like I had that, but I didn't, like I just had no clue what a business model would look like for this type of business.
Probably hadn't been fully fleshed out back when you were doing that. That wasn't like, oh, there's a handbook to go do this. Right?
All I knew was, okay, are we going to try to like hire somebody else? And if so, we need to have more funding. So 2009, for 2000, you know, the birthing of our big fashion show fundraiser started in 2009, happened in 2010, and I hired 2 counselors like 3 months later in 2010. And
fun.
Here we
so that'll be a great segue to the fashion show. So it has evolved into one of like the big events that people love to go to every year. I mean, held at the country club, everyone's dressed to the nines, evolved into, you know, a silent auction. And so let's just talk about how it went from, you know, 2009, 2010, like maybe I want to hire a counselor or two, to what it's turned into today. So tell us a little bit about the fashion show, what that is.
Well, so we created this event. The idea came from a friend of mine who was involved in a fashion show for breast cancer survivors. She was a breast cancer survivor, lives in Little Rock, Arkansas. So the idea came from that. I kind of started thinking like, oh, like, how do we push back against the culture that says that women need to be a certain size or a certain shape and all of that, and like how could we do this in a way that would celebrate like the beauty of all women? So that's really where we were going with it. We had, you know, a team that kind of started conceptualizing it. Again, I had no idea where it was headed, but, you know, came up with this name, Restoration Runway. And then my friend who was like leading the processing kind of meeting said, well, you need a theme. Like, that's the name of the event. You need a theme. And I still say it's her fault that every year I have to come up with a new theme with new creative and new ties to the mission and all of that stuff. But it's been really fun too.
That's
over
what
the years.
has excited the community, though, I think, is that it's not just
different.
the same thing every year. The runway is the theme, but what's been is what it's going to look like this year. What's the theme going to be, and what's the surprise? And so there's a lot that goes into that. And
you know, like a couple of times, I think you transformed into Elvis. And,
I think there's video out there somewhere, and I'm sure Jamie will find it if he can.
I've got it, Jamie. I've got it. But yeah, it kind of evolved into this, you know, we went from these like, just making sure that the models were across the range as far as age and, you know, stage of life, size,
and involving,
skin tones,
I love that you said, let me bring in business owners and let me partner with them to provide fashions.
Right.
And how
so local,
was so cool.
Yeah, local retailers. Yeah. And then, like you said, we added a silent auction a couple of years later, and then I love song and dance, and so probably by about 2014 we were adding all of that, and added men to the show in 2015. The theme was redefined, and so I sort of redefined the show by bringing men into the show, although it was still a ladies' event. And then we did it for the first 10 years at the country club. They were about to start renovations, and things were just kind of, you know, there was just no way that they could say for sure. We had really grown into the entire country club. Like we took over for this event.
How many people were you able?
Probably the last year of the club, we were knocking on the door of like 600. Probably if the fire marshal would have shown up, we would have been in big time trouble.
Packed in.
Yeah, packed in like sardines. And then we were moving 2020. It was a new vision. We were moving to a new venue, the Carolina Theater. It was, I can't remember the date it was scheduled for, but it was exactly a week before the show was supposed to happen that COVID, that they started shutting things down. And I had to say, okay, we're going to postpone it. Felt for sure by September we would have it. So the last 2 years were especially difficult and trying because of doing it under the umbrella, you know, with COVID kind of hanging over us. But I mean, I know I'm not the only person that experienced
Yeah,
that
yeah.
stress.
I'm sure that from a nonprofit perspective,
Yeah.
that this is a big part of your budget.
Yeah. You know, I mean, we made our budget though. That was what was so phenomenal about both years. This past year we had it in 2021, so it moved to September.
Yeah.
The event, you know, got postponed to September, and then I thought, well, let me just do something new. Let me just keep it in the fall. And in 2021, we were in person, but it was a much smaller
Right.
event. People were just still not comfortable going out
Yeah.
into crowds and
So
things
here we
like
are,
that.
2022, and things
Yes.
began to evolve. Things have relaxed a bit. So you've got an exciting new kind of venture coming up. So tell us a little bit about your upcoming event.
Well, so 12 years of Restoration Runway, it's a lot of work. It's wonderful, but it's a lot of work. I don't think people really realize. And so I started thinking, what if I just did a gala and brought in a keynote speaker? You know, I know it's not the most exciting thing, but it works. It works for a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah.
And I also have to think about my time and being able to, if it's taking me completely away from everything else, I needed a break. The board said, okay, through connections, that if you want me to go into all the details, I will, but I won't if you don't want me to, because it is pretty cool. Somebody knew somebody that worked with Mandisa's group. I have been a big fan of Mandisa. I wasn't an American Idol fan, so I didn't see her there,
Right.
but as soon as she hit the Christian music world, just really fell in love with her stuff. And interestingly, we had tried to bring her in for a show back in 2016. And I was working with a couple of different people in the community, and we just couldn't get a response from her people. We
Right.
couldn't get any traction. And as it turns out, my friend who's in the industry, she said she's just not doing well. She's really struggling.
Wow.
And she was in a very dark place, had lost her friend to breast cancer after she had really believed that God
Wow.
was going to heal this friend. And she came out of that time, but now she's being very transparent and very vulnerable about her story.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that she is a very prominent, well-known woman in the Christian community, a star. I mean, she's won a Grammy.
She won a Grammy. That's right.
And she's willing to say mental health matters. And
Yes.
so I had heard she had a podcast, I guess last summer. Heard an advertisement for it, so I tuned in and started listening to it. And it's her and a therapist out of Nashville just talking about mental health and just the realness of the need for counseling. And she just had a book drop that I didn't know was going to happen when I booked her. But it's called Out of the Dark, and it's her story.
So when is the event?
The event is Friday night, September 23rd, and it won't be like if you've ever been to a Mandisa concert. It's not her whole entourage.
Sure.
She's coming. It's going to be different in the sense that it's going to be a lot of speaking and singing, a lot of her sharing her story, a lot of really focused on mental health and counseling and the importance of that, specifically in the Christian community, because I think we can get so. A lot of people get bogged down in, if I just have enough faith, or if I just pray enough, they don't really understand that mental health is actually a physical piece of our bodies that breaks, just like our heart health or our kidney health or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm really excited to.
That's so
bring her
great.
in
Now,
and
how would people connect and find out about more information on how to attend an event like that?
Well, they can go to our website, which is rpcounseling.org. There's information there. I've got a Facebook event set up where they can get more information. It is also, we're hosting it at the Carolina Theater, so they can go to the Carolina Theater's website, and it's already listed. And tickets went on sale April 1st, so tickets are already on sale. We have a couple of different levels. One level comes with a reception with food and all that stuff, and then a couple others are just.
That's great.
For the show part.
So tell me what's next for Restoration Place Counseling.
Well, what needs to be next is finding more counselors, because, gosh, it's the need is so great. The need is so great. We have and it's hard finding those. First of all, I've read there's a shortage of counselors, which I believe, and then finding those counselors who really fit with our worldview and believe.
Right.
What we believe as far as bringing that piece of the Christian faith into it is really important to the healing process. So finding more counselors. So if anybody's listening that's a counselor, knows a Christian counselor and that wants to come work at a really cool place.
You guys have a great office. It's got one of the most delightful vibes, and
thank you.
It reflects your personality and your taste. And I know it's a very comfortable place for women to come and be. And so,
We have a
so is this
great
limited to
team.
women? Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Yes, it is. There were years where we considered, like, should we create an arm for men? But I feel like our bandwidth is really just barely enough to do what we do for
Right.
women. If somebody in the community wanted to start a restoration place counseling type of counseling agency for men, I would give them all of my.
You've got a playbook.
I would give them my playbook.
I love
and say,
it, right?
Do it. Yeah.
Well, that's another need. I mean, financial constraints are not limited to women.
No.
Lots of guys
I
who
get asks
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
all
sure.
the time. Yeah,
I bet you get asked about couples counseling too, don't you?
we do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We do.
Well, you know, that journey towards wholeness is so important because in order for me to be a great mate to my spouse, I need to be whole on the inside and I need to be constantly pursuing my own wholeness so that out of my overflow I can be a good friend, a good husband, a good employer, you know, all of those good things. And so I love that you are serving that niche and have so wonderfully for all these years. It's amazing how many years it's been, right?
I know. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And you and your wife are supporters. One of the ways people support are through, I don't know if I was supposed to say that or not, but I did.
You want to?
We have Mountain Movers Club.
Right.
So these are people that commit to like pledging either monthly or quarterly or annually a certain amount, and then they become part of the Mountain Movers Club.
And you can find information on that on your website,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
so give us that website again.
rpcounseling.org.
rpcounseling.org. That's
And
great.
counseling only has one L because some
One L.
people try to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So-
That would be a different kind of counselor.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Cindy, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Scott.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
so,
this was pretty easy.
It was very easy,
get
very
a little
relaxed.
nervous.
One of the things that I think is great about these interviews is it's just a chance to chat. And when we talk about having community leaders come in and speak to you, this is an example of what that looks like. It's somebody who's influencing and changing the community. And so we're just really pleased that Cindy was able to join us today. So thank you so much. So listen, tune in next time. We're going to have some great new guests coming up on the Prosperity Builders broadcast. Take care.